and welcome back to the Beyond Broadcast podcast, a show which takes a behind-the-scenes look at industry professionals and their lives working in the broadcasting and entertainment industry. Today, I'm speaking with Celia Jaspers. Celia has been in the media industry for over 30 years. She's covered it all as a director, writer, producer, script supervisor and editor. There's really not a lot she hasn't done, helping projects such as House Hunters International, Country Calendar, Milk and the Polycees. Her career has seen her work on a mixture of local and international TV, as well as her own personal projects, which have garnered many awards. Welcome to the show, Celia, and such a pleasure to chat to you. The first place I always want to start, and I feel like I do this to a lot of people that are from the Canterbury region, it's the North-South divide. It seems you spent a decent number of years living in the South. What drew you to eventually moving to the North Island, and what was it like growing up in North Canterbury?
Yeah. Well, I started work in Christchurch straight out of school, and I did 1 year there, and then they said, look, this job is becoming redundant for you, and the only way is for you to move to Auckland, and we'll give you a job in Auckland. And I was devastated at the time, and I thought that was the worst thing ever, and actually it turned out to be the best thing ever. So that completely launched me into Auckland City and different opportunities, and then from there I've literally just been bouncing around Australia and New Zealand ever since. So I lived at both ends of the country and several times up and down, and I do travel a lot prior to where I've now settled, but up till then I'd be moving every couple of years. So Christchurch was an amazing start for me in TV down there, and very lucky to get that start.
And Jane Campion was your muse for getting involved in the industry. In an interview you said from watching The Piano, that's where you really started to see that film and television was not all based in Hollywood, and that there was a chance for someone from New Zealand to actually make something big. Have you had the chance to collaborate or catch up with Jane at any point to mention this, or is it kind of weird to think about that it all started from that moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I applied for A Wave in the Ocean last year, and we did a Zoom with Jane, and that was the closest I've ever got to her, to be honest. And I would have said in my application that she was my inspiration to get in the industry, but no, I've never had the chance to collaborate, and that would be amazing, actually, because it really was the genesis of it all, and she's so inspiring, being a female filmmaker and so successful for so long. That's really incredible, and I don't think anyone else can really even compare.
I have to agree on the fact that she's insanely good, especially things like Top of the Lake. I still stand by that being one of the best dramas that has come out in recent years. I think that the thing I love, and I loved reading this about you, was your first exposure to television was at 15 during work experience at TVNZ Christchurch, helping out Jeff Clements coil cables for what would be, I would consider, the most legendary show to come out in New Zealand for kids. What now? Was it a mix of wanting to learn more about the job, or was it also you wanted to get a peek behind the proverbial curtain? Because I always, it was my dream as a kid, and pestering my parents to say, take me to the What Now studio. I really want to see it.
Yeah, that's a great thought. I think I'd always been interested in behind the scenes. Anytime you'd watch TV or a movie and they'd show behind the scenes, show the camera, and I always found that really fascinating from quite young. And I didn't really make the connection that I could get there, though. That just seemed an impossible journey to how do you work in film and TV. Literally in New Zealand, and certainly in Christchurch, I didn't think that was an option. And so when the work experience week came down, I went for an architect's office for 1 day, and I was going to be an architect. I did tech drawing at school and went along to this architect's firm, and they were very lovely, but they were so boring and so quiet, and I just went, this isn't me at all. And I was really devastated because that was my career plan from that point. And so I was quite sort of put out by it all, going, what am I going to do next? And my dad then found an introduction to the Gloucester Street Studios, which was the original CTV building, where TV1 was on one side and the TVNZ Towers, we call it, where What Now is made, was on the other side. And I had a tour around there, and then that's what lit me up. I mean, oh no, this is amazing. This is what behind the scenes look like, and all the gear and all the mechanical stuff. And it was pretty old fashioned in those days. This would have been in the 90s. And then I asked, can I come along to watch What Now on the weekends? And they said, yep, sure. So I was the only one in our little tour who turned up, and I sat in the audience and watched the show and just went, this was just the most incredible circus, but the most fun circus happening in front of me. And I was so fascinated by the behind the scenes. I've never really been that enamored with celebrity and the fame stuff. I didn't really care about actors and presenters, but I was very interested in how they made this thing, and I love the world that it was in. And so then when I saw this cameraman getting his feet caught up in cables, I sort of took the initiative. It's pretty bolshy, I guess, when you look at it in hindsight, but I just jumped up and said, looked at him quietly, can I give you a hand? He said, yeah. And so helped scoot the cables away, and at the end of the show they said, we'll see you next week. And it sort of just grew from there, really. And I think I wouldn't say kicking down the door, but certainly seeing an opportunity and going for it was what really put me into a different stead. And if I hadn't done that, I literally don't think I'd be in the industry. I just wouldn't have got that start. And TVNZ then gave me a job a few weeks later, part-time, and then I was working all through school part-time became the head tally op, answering all the phones and organising the competition winners and things like that, and working with the presenters and on screen. And then, when I finished school, they said, do you want to come in next year full-time as the office PA and intern? And like those jobs just don't come up. You don't really get offered those kind of things. So that was an incredible start. And instead of doing film school, I was literally already working at TVNZ from very young.
And it's also not a case of you getting introduced to that idea from your school, which was Rangiruru. This is like you literally taking upon yourself to kind of go through and find it out for yourself and really like you take the bull by the horns. And I love the fact that you just skipped the whole film school thing. It's like no better way to learn than to be on the job. And was it kind of bizarre in a sense thinking about like at the times that your friends would have been like out and about and instead on school holidays, you were going into the studio and working like a full-time job almost in a sense?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. Everyone at school knew what I was doing. It was a very interesting weekend job, put it that way. So I definitely wasn't kept quiet, and it just seemed so lucky at the time. It was so fun. It was a really cool group of people, and my careers counsellor at school, they just didn't know what to do with me, and they said, "Are you going to go to university?" I said, "No." There was nothing there that interested me. Canterbury was only offering film theory at that point, and I mean, I don't want to do theory. I want to make stuff, and there was no film schools down in. Sorry, the Christchurch Broadcasting School would have been there, but so I don't know why that never came up as an option. And so I did actually apply to film school, funnily enough, out of school, but I was too young, apparently, couldn't get in. So that was part of the reason TVNZ gave me a job as well. But definitely it confused the school careers counsellor. They just couldn't quite figure out how to help me. So I had to make my own path.
I feel like you've always kind of been on this making your own path, Celia, because I don't know if this is true, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but are you still able to fly light planes thanks to your dad, who was a pilot?
Yeah, I could technically fly one. My license isn't current. I'd need a quick brush up on airspeeds, but yeah, I could fly a plane if I had to. My father's a airline captain, retired now, and my brother is also an airline captain for Air New Zealand. So, and my mother was an air hostess, so we definitely had aviation in the family. So that was the other. If I wasn't going to be an architect, I would have leaned into aviation for sure.
And do you feel like you like to have your feet a bit more firmly on the ground, or do you see that you could have had a career in the air at some point?
Yeah, no, I do. I really love flying, and I literally, as a domestic flyer, all the time I'm at the airport, and I enjoy flying, and I like I sit up the front every now and again when my brother's flying. I can sit in the cockpit with him, which is really fun. So no, I love all the technical side of it, and the management, and keeping a cool head, and all those kind of things, which relate really well to film and TV work as well. To be honest, I think I'm very pragmatic and incredibly practical when it comes to solving problems, and just growing up in that kind of household. Yeah, we were sort of trained, I guess, to think that way. So I think that's probably put me in good stead, really. But no, I often think about what if I'd been a pilot instead.
And we touched on it a little bit. You talked about the fact that it was a bit scary moving out of Christchurch and going up north, obviously going to Auckland, the big smoke, which I think could be scary for anyone who's kind of from small town New Zealand. And there was kind of always this view, as you said, that the work is only in the north, it's only in Auckland. Do you feel this still applies? And I know that we're in a stage now where a lot more people like editors and people working in post-production are now living out in the middle of nowhere and able to complete projects as long as they've got a decent internet connection. But do you still feel there is a little bit of truth behind all the workers in Auckland, or do you feel like that's completely changed?
Oh, I don't know about completely changed. I mean, when What Now was in Christchurch, that employed a lot of people. That was quite a big production, the original What Now, and that was great. But there wasn't a lot else. There was a lot of corporate videos and corporate work and companies doing that kind of thing. But no film was really being made there at all. So then, yes, TVNZ and TV3 and Sky and all the networks in Auckland. So there's always been, through the 90s and 2000s, Auckland, I think, really was the hub of that. And it certainly is for international productions. They come in and the big shows that are being made up there, and a lot of feature films and TV dramas. A lot of dramas are shot within 50 kilometres of Auckland just because it's cheaper. And they often try to make shows that look like they're somewhere else, and they're just in Kumeu or somewhere. I think Christchurch has really had a bit of a renaissance lately, though. There's a lot of more work happening there. There's a lot of films. They've got an amazing screen office, Screen Canterbury, and they're really trying to attract dramas and films down there, and they've been very active, and I think that's fantastic because Christchurch is such a good location. There's so many diverse spots to film there, but what you can't do is crew it. There isn't a full crew down there, so you're travelling, and of course that costs production a lot. But Wellington is on par, I'd say, with Auckland. It just gets different kind of shows. So we have the big flagship type shows with Peter Jackson and James Cameron obviously living here, and they camp at Stone Street permanently now. And then there's other New Zealand local dramas, whether it be features or TV dramas. So Wellington's punching pretty well, I think, is doing pretty well. And there's enough crews here. There's lovely Wellington crews. I really like enjoying working with those guys. But Auckland's just a bit bigger. So I'd say it goes Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and maybe Queenstown in that order. Queenstown's great as a location, but again, you can't fill a full crew. You've got to travel a lot of people in. But of course, it's always had the appeal with commercials, but more and more dramas are now being shot down there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's interesting that there is so much of, how to say, a wealth of locations to be available for New Zealanders to be able to shoot. And I think that's always going to be the advantage that we do have. And one thing that I just found incredible was the fact that you started working as a director, Celia, at 18, and you were being mentored by Matt Samish. And soon after you started moving into this big journey, this thirst for knowledge, you picked up offline editing at South Seas. Like, what was it that attracted you to post-production? Because most people would love the idea of being on set. What was it for you that was like, I want to be behind the scenes and be a part of the cut?
Yeah, I think it was probably even in those What Now days in Christchurch, I was loitering around post-production a lot and up in the VTR rooms, and I became a sort of post-production assistant for that first year that I was in there. I really touched a lot of departments. It was really cool, just getting a good look at everything. It was the technical. I've always been quite good. I'm literally playing with a screwdriver in my hand at the moment, so, as a fiddling toy. I like pulling things apart and making things, and we've got a big workshop here on the farm that I'm doing things. But so maybe it was that technical element of it. And I think as I've got older, I've really understood the value of story more so than the gear. The gear doesn't matter now, but back then I loved driving the thing. I liked controlling it. And when I went to Australia, I was editing for Channel 7 and Foxtel, and the gear was very manual. It wasn't on computers. It was big machines and dials, and you were physically punching stuff. It was quite a physical thing. So I quite enjoyed the physicality and the coordination of that. But then what it really was I said, you can shoot what you like in the field, but if you can't edit it and it doesn't make sense, then it doesn't work. And very quickly I realised when I was 17, 18, it's the editing is where you make the story, and it's the editing that makes you a better director. And so that's why, opposed to leaning into camera directing, and I do a bit of shooting, but I really felt editing was way more me as a director, and it's just helped me be a very concise, precise director as well. And I go out and I shoot what I need. I don't shoot too much. I know exactly how to cut it in my head, and that makes me probably a better cameraman as well, because I then really work hard to get better angles, and I know how it's going to cut. And even now working in drama, when I'm looking at script supervising and I'm going, we're missing a shot, or that angle is going to be a little bit tricky to cut, and so I can just see it already. So I've already cutting the thing in my head. So I just think that breadth of editing and post-production knowledge, you just, after you've done it for so many years, you don't really even know you're thinking about it. It's just natural. But that served me very well, and I think it served me well being a director and an editor, and I'd flip-flop between sometimes. Sometimes I'd take a job as just an editor, and then I'd go, I really miss the directing and the dealing with people and the being out in the field, and then I go, I'm a bit sick of being rained on and getting wet all the time. It'd be quite nice to be in the office. So I couldn't do either of them full-time. I do like the both of them, to be honest. Yeah, I found full-time editing was you're just not physical enough, and you're inside too much, and I need fresh air, and it was a lot of time in dark rooms, to be honest, and no sunlight. So probably I'm quite an outdoorsy kind of person, so it's nice to mix it up.
Do you think a lot of that early training and a lot of that early exposure to being able to kind of deviate between the two really gave you the opportunity for later on now being able to have that ability to choose your projects kind of a little bit more strategically and being like, yeah, I'll do editing this time and directing? Do you think that's why?
Yeah, I'd say so. And it wasn't particularly planned that way. I think it was just my nature of always wanting to learn and upskill. And that's the South Seas sort of element. I was directing with Matt, and he was teaching me to edit at TVNZ. And then I realised, I quite like editing. But that was when Avid hadn't quite been invented yet. And so, but online editing and EDLs were kind of coming through. And this crazy NLE kind of platform that was just beginning. I can't remember the name of it now. South Seas. So I went and learnt EDLs and how to read them and conforming and onlining. So literally as a creative director and editor, but I can also be an onliner and a colorist, and I did that later on in life at Avalon at Go Post production. So that's pretty nerdy kind of post stuff when you're getting into online, and it's very technical, and that's nice too, but again it lacks a bit of the creative, so it's quite nice for me to balance it. But yeah, I think maybe that's why I'm just so busy. I'm really lucky to be able to flip-flop not only perhaps between jobs, but also between narrative and factual in that same way. So I try not to have too many gaps. I know the industry's been tough for the last few, sort of 6 months, but I've been lucky to have just ridden the wave a wee bit, perhaps because I'm a wee bit adaptable and I can jump around and try different things.
And CKC was a pretty memorable catchphrase for me in my early years. And in addition to the fact that Cool Kids Cooking was your program that you developed yourself, wrote, directed, and produced, just like Remarkable Vets, Christmas with the Lion Man, how do you manage to put things together, put the concepts together, and bring it all together in a way that it's smooth and works? Like, because you did mention that you do kind of get in two different mindsets, but do you ever feel like they conflict with each other at times, or do you feel like it kind of is quite seamless for you to be able to think of it in that way?
Yeah, well, I didn't develop those shows alone. So no, those ones were often, I was hired as a producer to then make them. So often I'd be given a pitch deck and the producer had pitched to the network, and then they would bring me in and go, right, how do we actually make this? And so I'd break it all down and figure out what the audience was, and then I'd design it. So it's like production designing, really. I do all the graphics and the music and how it's going to feel, then write the scripts, and then go shoot the thing, and then go to editing, and then wrap it all up in post-production and make a really nice sort of slick package. So I do like that whole delivery side of it, which I think's a really interesting use of all of those skills, from writing through to post-production and making a really tidy show. Yeah, no, I can't believe you know CKC. That's so funny. That was a long time ago. Man, made a lot of episodes. Oh, that's hilarious. Actually, his poster is on the wall with TK, the TK Tuhaka.
No way.
So yeah, that was No, that was a lovely wee show. So that was pretty fast and furious. We were shooting, I think we did 20 blocks of 20 episodes, or maybe 40 episodes at a time. And
I think it might have even been more than that. Yeah, you did an insane amount of episodes.
Yeah,
considering,
it's about 100 all up or something. Yeah, and I ended up editing them. It was just easier that I edited them. And so I'd shoot for 4 days at TVNZ in the studios, bring all this footage back, and then I'd spend the next couple of months just making an episode a week, basically. An interstitial duration. So that was a nice gig, really, and we ended up making 2 cookbooks out of it, which was fun. And I'm not a foodie, so I had to really kind of lean into that side of it. But I think I knew what kids liked, and coming from kids TV, it was an easy show to make. Story-wise, just make it fun and kooky and hope a bit educational was always good.
Do you ever feel like sometimes you deviate quite dramatically from the pitch to be able to make it work with something that you envision more? Because, like you said, that can be the pitch and you develop the idea, but have you ever had a situation where you felt like your idea was very different from the original pitch but worked a lot better?
Yeah, I can't think of a specific one, but I know the pitches are often quite vague, and then you do actually have to make it a real thing. So, and it naturally evolves. So, yeah, I'd say the end show very rarely looks like the pitch, to be fair, but it has the essence of it. The idea is always there because that's what drew the funding or the money at the time. So, no, you don't tend to deviate from that, but it's definitely what it looks like and how it feels, something that I would have a lot of influence over, and pace, of course, and all sorts of choices that you make as a director. Change all of those things, but I wouldn't say I've tipped the apple cart up completely, not that I can remember anyway, but things do evolve, and producers are always on board if it's a good best idea wins, and you just keep going forward and keep the show just evolves as it goes through.
And you've got to be a part of a pretty, what I would call probably one of the most well-known IP in New Zealand television, which is Country Calendar. It must be a huge buzz for you. Why is it that you feel Country Calendar still connects with people even after so many years? Because it's been on for decades.
It has. That show is just unbelievable. It's I know I don't know if there even is an answer to that. We often talk about it in the production and we're not even quite sure. But it's celebrating its 60th year next year, so we're in season 59 at the moment. So we're preparing for the 60th, and I've been on it for 10 years and probably directed 45 episodes, something like that. I don't do a lot of it because I'm doing other jobs as well. And it's so lovely to work on a show that everyone loves so much. You never get so many yeses as when you're working on that show. You walk into a place, we're with Country Calendar, do you mind if we shoot? Of course you can, that's a real delight. Any door is open. But I think the audience, they really do love it. And I've got a bit of a silly theory that I think the music is actually hypnotising everybody. I think we've been hypnotised as a nation when you hear that track, Hillbilly Blues, and we all just know what it is. Because if you look at the show back from the 70s and 80s, we've been looking at a lot of old episodes lately, it's very different to what it is now, but the music is the same. And so if you think back, I remember it as a kid, I loved it. But you might have at the time, but I think if you watch it now, you would not get the same feeling that you get now, because obviously it's evolved and cameras are a lot different, and drones, but our way of telling stories is different. It used to be presenters leaning against fence posts with their silly farm hats, pretending to be farmers, talking about land prices. The really early ones were men in tweed smoking pipes while, wearing a hat. It was just not what we think of it at all today. So these days it's very story-driven, it's very much character-driven, and it's people on the land who are telling us their story in their way. We don't go in with a script at all. It's a completely blank template when we go and meet them for the first time, and they just tell us their story, and we just figure out how to package that in a way that works for TV across 3 parts. But it's very authentic. It's people just love it. I think they love the aspiration of the maybe I could do that one day, or even if I can't work on a farm, I'd love to think that other people are in New Zealand. I mean, it is the backbone of New Zealand and real heartland New Zealand. I'm really proud of that. And, we make a lot of food for the country and internationally, and we do it in a really clean way. And it's just so nice to celebrate that at the end of the day. Like all farmers do is make food for the nation. And, and there's just so many people doing really interesting, innovative things, and farmers are very good at figuring things out. And if they don't have a thing or don't have the money or the means to buy something flash, they figure out another way of making it. And I think the audience often enjoys saying, oh, what have they done? What's that crazy invention they've come up with? It's really nice digging around in people's sheds and digging into their lives and going, right, what do you guys do? Tell me everything about you and I'll try and figure out what we can film. So that's a real privilege to be able to do that, and people let us into their lives, and hopefully they have a lovely video at the end of it they can remember for years to come.
That's one thing I've always wanted to understand is how do you find, and for lack of a better term, how do you find the talent for Country Calendar? It's always been the thing that's always astounded me, because I can imagine most people that work in the farming industry are not that boastful. They don't talk about what they do. They don't think they have an interesting story. So how do you come across these amazing people and these amazing journeys? How does it come about for you, Celia?
Yeah, well, a lot of them don't want to be on TV either. You often have to talk them into it, to be honest. And with the magic of editing and shooting and good directing, we make them look really good. But yeah, we have a researcher, full-time researcher and producer and associate producer, and they're looking for stories all the time. Some people get nominated, some people dob in their friends or neighbours. We look at all the industry magazines, we look at other kind of lifestyle magazines and pull stories from that. And there might be an article in a newspaper where someone has done one thing, but then we open up their life and see what else they've done. And that's often can be the start of a conversation. There's hundreds of stories on our research list any given time. The best 40 at any given year get selected, and there's a bunch of directors. I certainly don't direct them all, and we go out and meet them, meet the farmers or the landowner and whatever they're doing, and really figure out, is there a story here, and can they sustain half an hour on TV? Have they got something to say, and can they say it relatively clearly and succinctly? And visually, we always try to find really pretty locations as well. So if you find someone who can speak well about a thing they're passionate about in a really pretty location, that's pretty much a slam dunk.
For you, what do you think was one of the most unexpected golden stories that you managed to track down in your time working on Country Calendar?
Well, yeah, no, lots of interesting stories. Gosh, I even have to think back. I do love the big country stories, and I do love going back to the South Island. That's my waka, and Turangawaii, heading back there. And so I really miss the South Island. I definitely miss Queenstown and central Otago Lakes, all that area. So I'd say probably the Rootburn station was my favourite story, and that was with Ngāi Tahu own it now, and we were following the manager who's been on that farm for 30 odd years, and Stu and his wife and his lovely family, and we went up the Greenstone Valley, we helicoptered in, went into a cattle muster, we stayed the night just out on the ground in tents. Some of the guys were just sleeping under a tree, and some of them were in a hut called the Rat's Nest, and so it was quite a bit of whiskey being drunk that night, and the next day we did the muster and did some yard work, and then they drove the cattle back down the valley, and we actually helicoptered down because it was just impractical to ride horses with all the camera gear that we needed. I would have loved to have ridden a horse down, that would have been amazing, but the helicopters are pretty fun. Yeah, and then just that around Glenorchy and the head of the lake where Jane Campion's top of the lake is filmed is just a magic bit of the country, and I've spent quite a bit of time up there and up the Dart River, and it's something just so magical in those mountains. So being able to film a beautiful looking story in a really beautiful place, and then had all this incredible footage and all this amazing drone footage, and just with everywhere you look, it's cinematic. I think that's a real joy as well. And the story was so lovely because they were so humble and they didn't want to be on camera at all, and I really had to talk them into it. But I knew that there was a great story there, but he wasn't a boastful person at all. So that was really nice as well. He was incredibly humble.
What do you feel is the way to get someone who's uncomfortable being on camera to be able to be on camera? Is it trickery? Is it charming the pants off of them, or is it a glass of whiskey?
Probably both. Yeah, probably both. I think like being really honest with them and being authentic yourself. I'm going to ask them to be authentic, and I'm pretty straight up and pretty easy to read. And I think if they trust you and they feel they're in good hands, like it's a bit of an emotional journey they go on. And so I just sort of try and be me, and hopefully they want to talk to me, really. And if they trust you, then you keep reinforcing that trust and you never break it, then there's no need to, of course. That really helps. And I do want them to look the best they can. I want the end result to be the best they can be. So it serves my needs, making TV, but also for them having a really great story. So those two things obviously work together. It's not one or the other. I don't know. I think just being a nice, cheerful person always helps. And, I'm pretty persuasive when I need to be. So I can get people to do things.
Is that the reason why you're such a good mum as well? Because you've learnt from your kids. You're like, I can be very persuasive when I want to be.
Well, they don't listen to me at all. No, I'm much better at dealing with strangers.
You have a pretty interesting living situation compared to what someone would imagine when they think of a film editor or someone who's working in the film and television industry. They expect the big city life and everything else, but you're living out in what I would consider the Wop Wops, out in Martinborough. Beautiful, beautiful place. Like, the thing I need to ask, is that a massive reason why you continue to work on Country Calendar? Because you kind of have the same living arrangement as many of the people that are on the show. Is that kind of the kicker for it?
Yeah, no, ironically, I was hired without them even realising I lived on a farm. So, that was completely irrelevant. I'm the only person on the crew who is rural. Everyone else is urban. So maybe they keep me around for that reason. I'm not sure. But I think for me personally, it means that I'm incredibly knowledgeable, to be fair, about the farm stuff. And I know how the farm side of it works. And I know what the farmers are really saying by not saying, or what's happening with the stock, or what they actually mean when we're talking about, stall lambs and whatever. We can actually have farming chats off camera, meaningful ones, and then when we go on camera I can help steer them towards a better story, and I'm very mindful of shooting animals well and not showing limping things, or I understand what a mob looks like, or if there's too much gorse I'd never try to put gorse in the foreground even because it's a pretty colour. I go, no, we're not shooting weeds, we've got show the nice bit of the paddock for the farmer. So I think that's possibly part of why they trust me as well, to be honest, because they know that I'm looking out for that, because I naturally see it. But so I own and live on a farm with my husband in Martinborough, so we're a sheep, beef and cropping farm right on the outskirts of town, so not too whoppity at all. We're only 5 minutes to town, which is great. Good coffee and wine and gin and all that down there. So, I may not have been convinced to move right out into the Wop Wops, to be honest. That would have been a bridge too far. But luckily, this is a really central spot. It's only an hour and a half to Wellington Airport. So it's a world away, but actually I'm still quite connected. I can get to Wellington City quite easily, and I'd be flying every couple of weeks anyway. I'm always at the airport. It's quite amazing, actually. In this dual life, I have my film people can't quite understand. They go, what do you do? Like, where do you live? Like, they really can't fathom when they see me on set in my set clothes and my set uniform, that when I come home, I'm back in my farm clothes and my gumboots and my wet weather gear, and it's a completely different kind of life. I do have two streams on my desk at the moment. I've got my farm bills and all the farm accounts and all that work, and then I've got all my film development stuff and all my budgets and spreadsheets on the other side. So I do compartmentalise my life pretty well just to deal with those two things. And they don't really cross over, apart from Country Calendar is the only crossover there really is.
That was the thing, because I was half expecting you, Celia, to appear on camera today, because I can obviously see you at the moment with a swanny, like a swan dry, like, the gumboots and everything else, like the classic kind of get up.
I'm wearing wool. I've got a wool jersey on.
Well, there we go. Yeah, we got one part of the aspect, we're going.
I'm not bona fide country girl. I grew up in a little farmlet in North Canterbury, and then I was away for 20 years in the city. So no, I don't claim to be a farmer at all, but I've learned an awful lot in the last 14 years doing this. And I'm quite practical. I'm always fixing stuff, and I go out in the tractor and help stuff on the farm when I can. But unfortunately, I've been in the office a lot lately. I haven't been on the farm helping much at all. So I think husband's pulling down a fence today. He'd be quite keen for me to drive the tractor if I can get out there and help him do that. Yeah, it's actually really nice just to get some fresh air, to be honest. Get out of the office and go do some farm work, even for an hour or 2 hours, makes a world of difference. You come back and you feel invigorated, and you can fresh start, and you can carry on with your next job.
Once again, it's leaning on that whole thing of like the luxury of New Zealand is that like, yeah, rural areas are just so close by. It's something I always struggle to explain to my friends who are from different countries. I obviously live overseas myself, and people just don't seem to understand that the blend of city and rural is almost so close that, yeah, we're very lucky in that sense. And in that same respect, it's kind of like the duality of the other work that you've done, which was that you were randomly called up to join the team of House Hunters International, and you've explained that it was kind of just like a call up. You weren't even sure what the show was, and you had to do a quick Google to make sure that like it was what it was. It was a bit of a left field kind of arrangement. Does it still feel a bit weird to know that Michelle Obama is an avid fan and has most likely seen your work?
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. When I saw that Facebook post a wee while ago that Michelle Obama's favourite show is House Hunters International, I just cracked up. I could not believe that. I thought that was so amazing. Because, I mean, in New Zealand, we don't really know the show that much. It's not that big here, and it's on HGTV. We know the Sky channels and stuff. But any hotel room anywhere in the world, you flick it on to the HGTV channel, it's bound to be a House Hunters episode. And they play all around the world. It's syndicated in every country in the world, and yeah, it's a real it's a much bigger show than perhaps I think I've ever given it credit for, because I'm just not that familiar with it here. But I've been on that show for about 10 years now and probably shot about 60 episodes, and yeah, that's taken me a lot of places around Asia and Australia and New Zealand, and yeah, really lucky to be on that show and have a really cool team that travels with us to do that.
And did you ever expect to be part of such a massive international production? Because this is the thing, the scale of being on a production of that level must be completely different to, as you said, the country calendar where you might be getting the horses together to drag the camera gear up. What would you say has been some of the key differences, and also maybe some of the things that you see New Zealand maybe doing better in terms of production? Is there anything that you've seen that stuck out in a sense?
Yeah, it's funny because when you're in the field, it's the same thing. Country Cal was just a camera, soundy, and me, versus House Hunters, there's a camera, soundy, and me, and a PA and a fixer. That's just the four of us. But how we do it is very similar. I'd have to say when I started, my Country Calendar style was quite different, and then my House Hunter style was a different way again, because they were quite different shows. And then over the years, I've actually picked the best bits of how I direct that show and the best way I direct that show, and I've kind of become very similar. So tonally speaking, of course, the content's different, but how I do it has actually now become almost one and the same. I used to struggle when I would have 2 shoots back to back, and I'd have to flip-flop between them because the mindset was so different, the kind of show that it was and how they did things and how they wanted their answers versus how we do it in Country Calendar was much more organically. But over time, we've actually morphed, the two things have come together actually. So that's been really interesting observation over the years, which I didn't expect because they're quite different shows.
Is it also a production personality that you kind of adopt? Because I can imagine from working with New Zealand crews that, and the classic thing I keep on hearing from people is it's this get stuck in attitude, like don't worry about it. If we're not quite sure how to do it, we'll just do it anyway and figure it out. Do you feel like that kind of same personality transcends over to House Hunters International, or do you feel like no, it's like you still have like a completely different personality, like Celia who's a Kiwi and then Celia who's working on international production and like always professional? Like, do you feel like there is a difference in that sense, or not
I'm
really?
Professional all the time, Jamie.
Of course,
always
Celia.
Professional. Yeah. No, I'm the same person because I'm a pretty opaque, to be honest. I'm pretty transparent. I am what I am, and we always make sure, no matter what we're shooting, I don't care what it is that the people we're working with, the contributors or the talent, always have a great time, and so that would be my MO always. So I think I'm exactly the same person in a way, and pretty bubbly and chipper and talk 100 miles an hour, but we always have a really good day and try to have good snacks and make sure that whoever we've been working with has the best day. They go, oh, that was an amazing experience. I would never leave a location or people that I've been working with burning them, and I've always been really strong about that. And sometimes you go to locations around New Zealand often, and other crews or other production companies might have come through and they have treated the location owner badly, or they've had a bad experience, and it really affects us then going forwards. I always leave a really positive wake, and I'm really adamant that we leave somewhere, certainly how we found it, if not better, and we always have a very pleasant and polite and very respectful. I'd never burn a location or people like that. That's just perhaps just being a decent human. I don't know. So that would apply to every part of my life, to be fair. I don't chop and change just for TV.
Oh, that makes sense. And one thing I also wanted to touch on is the challenge of shooting internationally as well. And I read a story that you discussed the fact that you were shooting in China at one point and you had a very set visa period in order to complete filming. And during that time, obviously, all of you guys came down with food poisoning. And I say obviously because I feel like any international travel, there's bound to be someone who gets sick, someone who gets a cough, or someone who obviously gets a bit of a dicky belly. And Would you say that's probably the most challenging situation you've been put in terms of trying to put together a shoot and trying to produce an episode for House Hunters International? Like, do you feel that's probably the biggest one that comes to mind, or has there been other kind of challenging areas that you've had in other aspects of the production?
Yeah, look, any international shoot is challenging. Shooting in New Zealand's a piece of cake. It really is. And shooting in Auckland's kind of hard, but shooting in provincial New Zealand is very easy. So that's really the easiest, nicest way you could possibly work. When you go overseas, yeah, there's different challenges and jurisdictions and permit stuff, and people aren't as friendly, I find. Most Kiwis are kind of going, oh, what are you guys filming? Opposed to, what are you filming? Don't come into my house. And it is actually a really nice attitude here generally. And when going overseas, I think that the cameras are just no one cares, or you're breaching my privacy. We have those kind of issues quite a lot. So you've got to be pretty mindful where you go. But the China one was tricky, obviously the language barrier. We had 2 PAs with us, both Chinese who are interpreters, and we clearly didn't speak a lot of Chinese, just at please and thank you and those kind of things. But it was a big crew. There was a lot of extra bodies on that shoot, so it was difficult. It was hot. And then when cameraman went down, Soundy went down, kind of going, oh my God, how are we actually going to finish this shoot and get out? Because we had to leave because we were on special visas, and I don't think the Chinese government would have been favourable for us hanging around. So yeah, I wanted to get the shoot done. So there was a lot of discussions, how do we finish this? And we did get it done, and I ended up shooting a little bit of it while my poor cameraman was lying ill on the grass next door. He didn't give up, but he was not in a good way. Yeah, we just get it done, and we do our farewells and fly home. But I was pretty grateful to see the Air New Zealand Koru, I have to say, on the plane. I think I cried when I got back to the plane and said, oh my God, we're home. New Zealand can take us home.
So I'm guessing it was a lot of dry toast, crackers and Sprite over the last couple of days to kind of settle the stomach. Like, geez, you must have been like, oh God, what do we do now? But yeah, I can't imagine the feeling of obviously not only having the time pressure, but also the delivery pressure as well. So like, I found that story like incredibly interesting. And Celia, moving forward as well to your own projects, Milk, Homeschool and the Polycees, among your work for the other production companies, you've produced various films. So I've hit the international circuit, and we were talking a little bit about this off air, but small budgets can be limiting, but also provide ample opportunity for being innovative. And how has funding your own projects taught you not only to be nimble, but utilize connections? And also, was COVID the catalyst for you to be able to dive into these projects as well? Because it seemed like it kind of all kicked off for you around 2019.
Yeah, good observation. Well done. Yeah, no, unpacking a bit of that. So yeah, COVID definitely started it all, and I actually did the 48 Film Fest that year, which is 2020, and that was the lockdown year, and everyone was at home. We were in full lockdown at that time, and miraculously they decided to run the competition anyway. So full credit to the guys for doing that. And that was the only year I've ever wanted to enter, and I went, that all the big teams be broken up, everyone's at home, everyone's on really limited resources. I'll actually give it a go. Why not? And nothing else to do. And so yeah, I made a short, just my family and the kids and the cat and a few cattle out in the paddock, and we had the farm to obviously play in, so I had lots of locations to run around. And I nearly didn't finish it because I just didn't think it was good enough actually. And I thought, it's no point. No, this isn't, my grand vision hasn't been able to execute it as well, And my husband actually said, no, just edit it, finish it. And so I finished it pretty quickly because I can edit pretty fast. And my lovely Soundy, Don, did the mix for me quite quickly, and then we uploaded it. And I was absolutely astonished to find out that we'd actually won Best Family Film in the national finals. So that was really cool. I did not expect that at all, to be honest. And so that really invigorated the need to do more narrative and scripted. And I've always wanted to do scripted, and I've just been drawn into factual for a long time because the work's always been there. And as a director, it's very hard to get narrative work. So I've always just worked in factual, not just because that's what I want to do, but that's sort of the practicality of it. And so I really this is the time I need to rebirth and fresh start. And so then I wrote another short film called Milk during COVID also, but only because that competition buoyed me with the confidence that actually maybe you're okay and you can do things. So I wrote a lovely little story about compassion and helping others, and my daughter acts in it, she stars in it, and we shot that down in Martinborough, and quite soon after lockdown, I think it was about September that same year, and that film could not have happened if I hadn't lived in Martinborough, because the community was so amazing. Obviously we had no budget for that, and literally, I had amazing film friends who drove all the way down here with very good cameras and gear and came up from Christchurch, and I couldn't have done it without those guys. And it was incredibly humbling to be helped, to be honest. And it was nice 2 days for them in the Martinborough, but they really, no way I couldn't have done it without Jono and Joe, and my gaffer. And then the community really came behind us, and they all helped, and they donated things. They donated wine as part payment to help pay the crew, and we made this gorgeous little film, and everyone is so proud of it now. I still get people stopping me on the street and talking to me about it, and that's 5 years ago, and so it's so just delightful. And then, of course, you'd have a wonderful experience like that, and you go, right, I want to do another one. I've probably used up all my free favours now, so now I have to start paying people. And so I just had to self-fund the last one, the Polycees, which is a proof of concept for a feature that I've written. But yeah, I've been unlucky with funding through the agency, so I've just had to do it myself, to be honest. And I know how to do it. It's just getting the resources and paying people is the trouble. So yeah, but no, you'd keep going. I really love short films and making them, and I've produced about 4 other films with people, and just done the 48 hours this year. I actually helped produce with the team, and I didn't need to do it particularly, but I really appreciated the effort they were making and the hustle they were doing. I mean, no, if I can help, I will. And I ended up script supervising and producing and ADing and bits and pieces. And, it was a really fun experience. So it's nice, that space. It's so freeing because you're not making for a network, you're not making for a distributor. You can do whatever you want. But I'd love to do more shorts, but it's just funding them and getting them off the ground is pretty challenging.
And have you found that, because you talk about the fact that the community came together, that not only means the people in your immediate community, but also the film community as well. Do you think that's a big point of difference in terms of New Zealand, is that people will want to get stuck into projects knowing that there's passion behind it? For example, I'm guessing a lot of your film friends and our television friends who are working behind camera and such were like, we want to help you, Celia, because we can see that you're actually dedicated to this project. Do you feel like that's kind of like the heart of the industry in New Zealand, is that people will help you if they know that you are putting care into something?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, which is so lovely. And people, if they can see that you are really driven and you can actually obviously execute the idea well, and you're not going to waste their time and have a film that never gets finished, if they believe that you can finish it, and just your enthusiasm goes a long way. So yeah, I'm very grateful. And a lot of my friends, of course, I'm a bit older and I'm not, in my 20s. So of course, all my friends are amazing. They're at the top of their field. So they've got no need to do a short film. They don't really need to do that at all. And so they're coming back a lot of steps, to literally coming back a lot of steps to help me, and I couldn't be more grateful. And because they're all just so good, it's really hard when you don't work with professionals. So I'm just really lucky to work with all these guys who are just so amazing.
And one of the other things I want to touch on is the fact that you've been hitting the film festival circuit quite frequently. Obviously, you made a lot of appearances. And I think for a lot of people, they think you put the film out there, it's out, it's done, that's it. What would you say has actually been the biggest challenge when it comes to going on the film festival circuit? And what are the things that are often not discussed? Because I think for a lot of people, they don't realize that you usually can't even release your film technically until it is done through the film festival circuit. So what would you say has been some of the learning experiences you've had over that time?
Yeah, it's a whole mysterious world, to be honest. And when I first started with the first film, Homeschool, and that I just sort of dipped my toe into it a wee bit. And you go to a website, Film Freeway, and you sign up, and then there's literally 10,000 film festivals you could enter. And you've got to be really selective about what ones are going to work for this film at this time. Do they select films that are like mine? There's absolutely no point entering Sundance because you're never going to cut through, so you're wasting your money. You do have to pay a fee to enter a lot of these festivals. Some of them are quite cheap, but some of them get up there. And then so the second time around with Milk, I really jumped in pretty deep with that one just because I felt the story was so universal. I knew it would travel fairly well. Had some really amazing advice from Gina Delabaka at Show Me Shorts, and she steered me towards the kind of festivals that she thought that film would fit, which was invaluable advice because you're not wasting your time then. And of course, you do have to look out for all the scam festivals. There's a lot that just take your money and disappear, and they never have a festival at all. So, or online, and then they don't actually happen. So there's a whole dark side of film festivals, and you've got to really cut through all of those. But yeah, it's a real honour. It's such a buzz getting selected, and then if you get a nomination for an award, and then if you win something, that's really cool. And it's so great for your cast and crew, and really celebrating them, and you try to put them up for as many awards as you can, just for the film itself to be recognised as being of good quality, but also a really good story and touching hearts and minds and that kind of thing. But it's a bit of a minefield. And then I'd say the biggest challenge for us is just travel. The tyranny of distance in New Zealand is so difficult. And again, I've applied but never had any assistance to travel. I've just self-funded myself to go overseas to these festivals, and a great experience. They're really good. I wouldn't not have done it, but that was really hard. I think that's a bit of a shame. Getting into the auteur kind of film festivals isn't the kind of films that I make, so I'm never going to apply to those. I will never get to Cannes for the kind of stuff that I was making at the time. So it's just, if you don't get into that, you're not a failure. It just means you've got a different genre or a different stream of film, and it's just as well seen and celebrated, but you'd often don't get assistance to travel to it. Yeah, but I definitely go. It's really good networking. It's really nice talking with other filmmakers outside of the country, and you actually get quite a different perspective, and I come back really buoyed and really kind of hopeful, actually. And even in LA was really cool. People we met there were so nice, and it just felt really positive. It felt possible. Things were possible there. We could get things done. I think it's nice to get out of New Zealand, just remind yourself that there's a much bigger bubble out there, much bigger world, because we do get a bit insular here sometimes. But it's always lovely talking to other filmmakers, and even though you can't really help each other out with work, you might collaborate on a project or just keep each other going emotionally, which is really nice as well. So I'd never, these days, unfortunately with Milk, I got into so many festivals, but the country was in lockdown, and we couldn't leave. So if I'd left, I wouldn't have got back in, and I would have had to go through the whole quarantine thing. So that was a real shame, because I missed a huge amount of opportunities at really big festivals that could have actually changed the direction of my career at that time. So I'm disappointed that happened for that film, but of course the film happened because of COVID, so the two things are together. I couldn't do anything about it. I'd love to do more films, and I would certainly be very selective about where I try to get into, and make a real effort to travel, I think is really valuable.
Celia, the way I see it is that a lot of your films are more directed towards family general viewing rather than being like the kind of film festival sort of like expectation that people have of these dark, gritty dramas that gonna make you cry and be sad the whole time, and yours are a little bit more hopeful and positive. Do you kind of feel like that's like a missing element in a lot of films now, the aspect of fun, hopefulness, and maybe like something that's actually a little bit more lighthearted?
Yeah, well, look, I know the audience wants it. That's certainly the feedback you see, and you hear distributors talking about it too. They do actually want family films. I don't watch a lot of dark stuff, even on TV. I mean, I watch TV dramas, but I wouldn't go to a cinema to watch a really dark, depressing film. I just don't. I'd come out of that feeling really down. You want to come out feeling hopeful and feel like you've been escaped to another world. I think it had to be a pretty powerful film to get you into a cinema these days. So you've got to be pretty selective about what stories are going to work, I'm naturally a cheerful kind of person. So I think coming from What Now and all the kids TV I did for 10 years, I think that naturally I find I've kept putting children in all my films. Not because I was a mother particularly. I've just always liked working with kids. So I do like that family kind of element and just the joy that kids can bring. Yeah, so maybe I think my niche going forward might be family. I'd really like to direct family, either TV series or feature films, certainly would be amazing. But I just feel I know that space really well and I can connect with it. So it's sort of about leaning into your genre. It's a bit like I get asked to help a lot in rural programs or scripts or consultants because I just know that space as well. So maybe they're my two genres I need to lean into. But it's like I couldn't do a horror. I can't even watch a horror. So I won't be a good person to make one of those.
I can totally understand it. It's the same thing for me. I think I'm still a person at 32, 31 who still covers his eyes with his hands going to the cinema and is absolutely terrified to go to the cinema if someone asks me to go to one. So no, I completely get it.
Same.
And one other area that I really have found interesting about you, Celia, is the fact that you seem to be one of those people that is constantly learning. I saw that you had done like many, many different film courses, and it seems like you're one of these people that has a thirst for knowledge, has no reason to ever stop learning. Is that like a core part of your kind of career and a core part of you moving forward, is that you feel like there's always something new to learn?
Yeah, I don't know where that really comes from. Maybe it's because I didn't go to university. I feel like I'm lacking that. I don't know. But yeah, I really do like upskilling, and I do a lot of masterclasses and pretty high level kind of short courses. It probably suits my schedule and my personality that I can do a short course, to be honest. I can't commit to a year or 3 year study in anything. But a lot of the stuff we know, like I know a lot of stuff, and then sometimes I just want one little aspect and I go, oh, I don't actually know about that. And so then I'll go do a special course just on that. So yeah, I don't feel you could ever stop learning. It's funny I do a lot. I don't know really what drives that. Maybe I just want to try and be the best that I can be, and I feel like there's always more to learn. There's always someone, who's more amazing, who's done something awesome, or someone who knows more than you. I'm very, very aware of that. So I always chase stuff. I know what I don't know. So I think I quite enjoy filling in the gaps where I can.
And with 6 field goals in the 2025 season, can we expect a hat-trick in the 2026 season for the Martinborough Ladies Hockey Club?
On earth did you know that? That is an abstract piece of knowledge. Wow. Well, 4 of those goals I got in one game, I have to say, and that would be a record. So I was having an absolute blinder that game. But no, I'm a striker. I go up the front and hit a few goals. That's my job. So yeah, you get to take the glory. But no, I do like getting goals. It's really nice. And I'm still playing sport after all these years. You know, I've been playing hockey for 45 years just about. So yeah, it's nice to be doing something.
It was kind of something I expected because I know Rangi was always well known for hockey. They were pretty big on that, as well as I think soccer as well. I think they had a pretty decent soccer team from memory from when I was at high school as well. So I love finding that out about you, and just the fact that you're still playing in hockey, incredible. I love it. I think that's really cool. And
yeah.
The final thing before we come to the end is you've always stood by the fact that determination and luck plays a massive part in not only entering the industry, but continuing to stay in the industry. And how the industry is at the moment and the fact that it's been all that you know, if you had a choice, would you see yourself in another industry early on? I know you touched on architecture and possibly working in the airlines, but has there ever been this like second thought maybe that you've been like, oh, maybe I could have done this as well? Or has it always been like you've only ever seen television and it's where you see yourself staying?
Yeah, look, I have only ever wanted to work in this industry and I have never done anything else, which is kind of weird, but also incredibly lucky that I've literally worked full-time my entire career and very few gaps, you know, there's not much in there. So yeah, it definitely is who I am, not what I do, I'd say, which is possibly psychologically interesting. But yeah, I really just love all about it, you know, but then recently you kind of insecure-wise of working in this industry, it's terrible. You kind of go, God, I wonder if I had a real job. What if I had an actual career job that I was employed by somebody? And, you know, I've never really done that. So it's, yeah, I've started thinking about that a bit more, but I still love this and I've still got a few years left in me. So I definitely want to do all I can. And, you know, but once as being a freelancer, once you stop, you stop. There's no superannuation. There's no plan beyond that. So it's pretty tough in our world. You just have to keep working until the day you don't really. So it's not for everybody. I don't know if I'd recommend it as a career, only if it's a real calling, like if it's really who you are and you can't think about anything else, then yeah, by all means. But I wouldn't get into it for the fame or the glory and certainly not the money. Yeah, you've got to really want to do this world. But I think the skills are useful though. They're transferable. You know, I was talking the other day and it really dawned on me, actually it's project management is what we do. Turn anything into a thing with those skills. We know how to analyse story and then we know how to brand it and package it and manage whatever the vehicle or the platform is. So hopefully I've got some project management skills if I ever need to change career.
And have you ever had the opportunity yourself to kind of be the equivalent of Jeff? Because Jeff obviously was the one that kind of introduced you to the industry, saw you picking up the cables and was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna bring her into the fold. She joins the crew. Have you found that you've been that same person for someone else who's entered the industry? And if so, who was it and how has their career gone thus far?
That's a big question. I do help a lot of people where I can. Yeah, I get asked all the time. My inbox is constantly full of people wanting a start or to be an intern or to come and help me. Unfortunately, I can't often offer that because I can't have people with us on set and all those kind of things. But I try to give really practical advice about where people could start or looking for opportunities they might not be aware of. And, you know, I don't tend to just go, no, sorry, I can't help you. I do try to do meaningful engagement. And then often a PA, I noticed I must have helped her a couple of years ago. She turned up on the set of Red Rocks and said, oh, do you remember me? You really helped me. And that was really sweet. And another wardrobe lady who I got in to do Polycees, she was actually a stylist and she hadn't done film wardrobe, but I knew she had a really skillful woman and I knew she'd be okay, and so we quickly gave her a crash course in how costume works, and now she's gone on and is working in costume in film and TV and doing commercials and loving it, and just says to me often how grateful she is that I gave her that chance. So that's really lovely too. You know, I definitely recognise talent, and even if they're not actually in the industry, I know that I can transfer them into it really quickly, and most of that is attitude, to be honest. You can teach anybody anything in our world. It's not actually that hard, but having the right attitude and being able to work with people and being really collaborative are key. So if you can do those things, then you can learn all the rest, to be honest. It's fun, not building teams. I actually do quite enjoy that. And I think maybe as I'm becoming a producer, that's a big part of what we do is build teams that can work together and get the job done.
And what's next, Celia? Because you've mentioned the fact that at some point Polycees could be a feature-length film, which I'd love to see. And then probably many other projects that you can't talk about. So I do understand that you're probably going to have to be very careful about what you mentioned, but what is next for you? What is on the horizon?
Yeah, and I've got a lot of things in development. I still get hired as a script supervisor for dramas, and I really love that actually. And I would always jump at those chances whenever I can find a gap in the schedule. And I certainly want to direct narrative work, so scripted TV or feature films, so as a gun for hire. So I don't need to have created the IP on that at all. I'm more than happy to step into other people's scripts. But on my own things, yeah, we're very close to pre-production on a feature film, Dog Show, which is a New Zealand feature about dog trialling, slightly similar to Country Calendar in a way. Similar kind of audience, very much that crowd, and that's a really beautiful, heartwarming family film, and I'm producing that, and that's, I really hope we can get that made, because I think there's a huge audience in New Zealand who will really, really love that. But yeah, certainly got my own features. The Polycees feature's been written a few years ago, and that's a family film, really fun, but puppets, kids, and running around Parliament, so that's a pretty wacky concept, but again, the children themes keep coming through, and that wholesome kind of relationship between parent and child, I keep seeming to lean into those kind of stories. But yeah, I consult on a lot of scripts. People ask me to help break down their stories, or if they need a farming angle, I'm often the go-to person for that, which is really nice. But yeah, so I know a lot of ovens, a lot of ovens on, a lot of plates that I'm spinning, but it's neat to be busy, and also just been useful to other people's productions and help where I can.
And actually, one other question I had was, because of the fact that you said the Polycees, great wee short film that you put together, you managed to get those shots in the cabinet, but were the other shots in the Wellington Law Building, if I'm not mistaken? Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So we shot in Parliament Building in the debating chamber. We only had 2 hours on a Sunday morning to knock out as much as we could there. And then we shot out in the lawn as well, in the front lawn looking at that Parliament Building. And then all the interior, we needed a Prime Minister's office. And so we jumped over the road to the old Parliament Buildings, which is the Victoria University building now. I don't think it's the law office, but it's the original Parliament buildings, the lovely big wooden ones, opposite the Supreme Court there. And yeah, so the Historic Places Trust let us in there, and we used one of their rooms. It was a perfect set. I didn't need to add a whole lot to it. It looked the part, and actually had the beehive in the background out one of the windows, which was really cool. So yeah, we shot in there for 2 days to get all the other shots. So yeah, it was really neat actually. It was a really cool experience. The crew were saying to me, how are we here? How did we get into Parliament?
That was my main question. I was like, Celia, like, who do you know? Like, damn.
Yeah, you just have to ask. Literally, just ask. Yeah, and I had a very good contact to help facilitate that, but it was definitely just asking Steve Mahari, and he said yes, amazingly. So yeah, there we go.
Is that a little bit of it as well, the whole idea of like, you kind of have to have the gusto to just ask and see what happens, rather than being fearful that you're going to get a rejection?
Yeah, I think so. Go in with honest intentions and be pretty straight up, and people either say yes or no, and if they say no, then you just pivot and go find somewhere else. But yeah, like you'd be surprised New Zealand's pretty good like that. We're not too bad at opening doors, you know. I can't imagine how difficult these things would be in America or Australia. Like, you can't even get anywhere near Parliament House in Australia without going through 10 layers of security, whereas New Zealand's actually reasonably open. You know, people can go in there. So yeah, it's just a different attitude as well. But no, I think always ask.
And one last question I have, and this is actually something I'd be interested to ask a lot of people in the future. What is one project or one film or television show that you think best represents New Zealand television and film and its current state? And if so, what is the project? And tell us all about why you feel like it's reflective of the culture that we have at the moment, or a good representation of New Zealand film and TV.
Oh, that's a tough question, Jamie. You should have given me some prep on that one. I have to really think about that. I can't say one show encompasses that, but I'll point up to this lovely little show, Red Rocks, on my wall here. Red Rocks I had the real pleasure of being script supervisor on last year, and that's a delightful little series. It literally is, again, a family story, but shot on the south coast, and it just looks amazing. Like, you're in the water, literally. We were quite wet at times, and up in the rocks, and that whole south coast of Wellington, and that the show will get sold overseas. And even when we're shooting it, I was saying to David Stubbs, the director, I said, man, this looks like we're out here. It really feels like we're in the environment. All the shots really show the location. So that was something you couldn't do in Auckland, and you couldn't do in a studio. You know, we were literally standing out on the ocean shooting that. So that was really cool. I think that was a nice example, perhaps, of just what New Zealand can be. Use what we've got. It was literally on the edge of Wellington City. We didn't have to go for miles. We were standing in Island Bay, in Awhiro Bay. But yeah, it's just a mystical wonderland out there, and it just looks so far away on camera, but actually it was quite, practically it was very close. So that was a nice example, and a great family story, and we're getting into series 2 next year, so that's exciting.
If you like the podcast, I'd love for you to leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform and let me know your thoughts on the show. Don't forget, you can reach out to me via Instagram at beyondbroadcastpod or via email at beyondbroadcastpod@gmail.com. Until next time, take it easy.